Hello and welcome to Fierce. This program celebrates the diversity of LGBTIQ identities and perspectives. Fierce is produced in Bundjalung country at 2NCR Lismore and can also be heard on podcast at fiercefm.podbean.com and in New Zealand on Fresh FM, as well as all over Australia through the Community Radio Network. This is Peter Lena, and I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands where you are listening. They took care of these lands sustainably for hundreds of thousands of years and then shared this land with us at great cost to their own lives. I want to honour and thank them for the work they have done and continue to do to care for country and to sit on the earth. I also want to thank the fairies and crones who came before us in history to fight for our human rights, to love fiercely.
Fierce.
Yes.
Hello, dear listeners. In Lismore, we've just had our global school strike for climate. Many students had to risk penalties for missing school, asking simply for the federal government to commit to no new coal, oil or gas projects, 100% renewable energy generation and exports by 2030, as well as funding for a just transition and job creation for all fossil fuel industry workers and communities. And we're chatting to two amazing queer activists today. So first, we're talking to Jara Human, and they're a universal force. You've been writing some chants for the planet.
Yeah, well, I want to say that's my gender as well, the universe, that's how I identify. Yeah, I've been making up planetary chants. At first I was thinking, how can we talk about what's happening? It's so big, the pain that we feel, the fear, the deep emotions, and then the love that we feel for the planet and nature and how much we want to protect it, because I think all of us just really love the animals and the trees. I've been trying to bring together all of that into really simple rhymes, funky planet chants, and I think they'll keep evolving, and I'm trying to put actions into them, like simple call and response kind of stuff and hand clapping, so that everyone can be involved, and feel like owning it, and that we're all funky and we know what's happening. We feel like outraged and terrified, but we also feel this incredible love, and just that thing of diversity is strength. When we get together, we can all just do exactly what we love doing, and that will just bring a really yummy diversity and flavour to everything that we do, but also to protesting all this movement that's growing with Extinction Rebellion. I love my planet, I'm standing up for life. I love my planet, I'm standing up for life. Let me hear you say, hell yeah, I love my planet, hell yeah, I love my planet, hell yeah, I love my planet, and I'm standing up for life. I'm standing up for life. I'm standing up for life.
Awesome! And you had the whole crowd going off, 3,000 people doing that with you.
That was so awesome. Yeah, I'm really trying to make ways to involve everyone, because we might as well have a big party. We're all together and we're all pretty funky people, so let's find ways to bring that funk to the streets. And that's what I'm just trying to add a little bit more to. And our love, our love for the planet. And that's why we're all here. It's obvious that we all love the planet, so let's just be out about it. It's like we forget that we actually live on a planet in space, and that this is our home, and it's such a miracle planet.
You've been an activist for over 2 decades, writing songs and music for the trees in deep ecology. How are you feeling at this time? Are you hopeful about this uprising?
That's a big question. I don't really get into hope. I feel like this fire of energy that's been really catching. Obviously the fires have been burning and people have been really feeling like the apocalyptic winds and heat, and those exponential graphs that can just go along really slow and then all of a sudden it peaks. And that happens so much in lots of ways in nature, but I think it happens in social movements as well. And I think as it becomes more and more obvious that we're deeply in the shit, people are starting to wake up, and it's, I think, people that have been long-term activists, and that we've been dealing with the despair and also the strategies for change for so long. I find it invigorating that it's kind of growing, because it's almost like, oh wow, this is it, this is finally sort of happening at crunch time, and this is what it's going to take.
Jara, you were talking earlier about you identify as the universe, so is that like a gender identity or a sexual preference?
Well, it's both. It's a sexual preference. and the gender identity, yeah. Oh, it really came to me clear the other day. I just saw this vision of how diverse the universe is, and I started making this song called The Funky Diverse Universe. Yeah, like there's so many amazing, bizarre creatures, you know, on this planet, and I started to imagine all the other creatures that might exist somewhere in the universe, like with 3 googly eyes and tentacles, and then somewhere in that sort of diversity I saw like men and women, and they were just sort of lost in the crowd, you know. It was like there's no way there's a binary on this planet, and I just saw like, wow, the universe is just diverse, and not just in gender ways but in every way. And it's just, of course, this Western society just got it all wrong because it's into domination and needed 2 different categories for that to work. But life's not like that, and it's actually funky and diverse, like the universe. So I was like, yeah, that's me, I'm the universe, and I don't need to identify as anything else, male or female. It's just, that's so boring, so old school.
Do you want to share a little bit about your history regarding your journey with gender?
Oh my God, where to start? You know, I have been carrying a lot of gender trauma because a few years ago I was really wondering if I should transition to male, and I found that just really confusing and dark, and feeling like I had to decide, just because, I mean, I always thought intellectually that it's good to be diverse, and, you know, I believed in two-spirit. I thought, you know, I was more like a two-spirit, but I felt like the pain of, like, my gender trauma was kind of pushing me to decide one or the other. And if I was going to decide, I would definitely pick male. So then I was like, well, maybe I should just man up and transition, you know. And I'm not saying, you know, that won't change, like I still could do that in the future, but I've been learning somatic experiencing as a trauma therapy practitioner, and that just has helped me so much, and that perspective has really shifted stuff for me. At some point I felt like my gender trauma was so endless that it would never like leave, and the shame or the weight of, you know, all that, I couldn't see that it would ever end or something. But then somehow, and I think also through other avenues like plant medicines and just the love of nature and music and like meditation, and it's like somehow healing has happened. And I just feel like maybe it's because I'm like getting older and maturing, but I feel like, oh wow, I'm actually through the other side of that pain, and I feel so much lighter at the moment. And lately I just feel like, wow, I'm in this body and I'm just whatever I am, you know, and I don't really know what it is or have to know. It's just, and I like the idea that it's the diverse universe. But, you know, apart from that, I feel like it's just in the unknown, you know, like not knowing and not needing to know. I live in a really nice bubble, so I feel very supported by friends and family. And, you know, I know it's hard when you're out in the mainstream. It's so painful when people like put bullshit gender stereotypes on you, you know. It's so painful to deal with. But, yeah, so I know it's not over because it's always there. But, yeah, I feel pretty good. Feel pretty supported just in being what I am. Yeah, I'm here. I'm queer. Sweet island in infinity, this blue-green planet mystery. I'm alive in this time in history. What can we say? We know it's this way. I feel urgency, extinction, planet emergency. I feel urgency, extinction, planet emergency. Humans were adaptable, remarkable, self-reflecting. Our knowledge is growing exponential. We're speechless, life is screaming at us. The science is clear, what the heck, we're here. It's all hands on deck, what the heck, we're here. It's all hands on deck, I feel urgency. Extinction, planet emergency. I feel urgency. Extinction, planet emergency. I listen to the land, listen to my blood and bones, listen to ancient wisdom. I listen to the land, listen to my blood and bones, listen to ancient wisdom. I love this unbelievably miraculous blue-green planet. I love this unbelievably miraculous blue-green planet. I feel urgency, extinction, planet emergency. I feel urgency, extinction, planet emergency. Yeah.
Hey, great. What a groovy song. Beautiful.
I think queers need to take over and have like amazing parties with our incredible like diverse outfits. And actually, now that I said it as a joke, I really do believe that in some ways, because I really see like nature created us queers for a reason, and that the earth like needs us to take our place, and our place is like, I mean, it's so different for everyone, so I'll just speak for myself. Like, we're in this in-between space or two-spirit space, and we all know it was revered in some cultures and as shamans and as people between that walk worlds, between worlds, and it's like we need that to like bridge the so-called masculine feminine. As a culture, we need love of playfulness and just honesty, sexual exploration, and I think we need everyone to just feel like no one else is going to solve this problem. It actually is up to you, meaning me. It's like me, you. If we don't try and all like get together with everything that we've got, with all of our passion, all of our love, all of our skills and talents, it's like we could be the last generation of humans on this planet. I mean, it's looking pretty bad. So when I first heard about Extinction Rebellion, I just was pretty cynical and was like, oh yeah, well that's not going to work, because look at what we're up against. It's too big. It's like they'll just win because they got everything. But then it's sort of grown on me. We can win because we have to. And that's what's on the line. It's just all life on earth. Nothing can be bigger than that. So it's like life is on the line, and we know that, we see that, and people aren't stupid. Like, we've been building and building in our capacity, probably, for a really long time, and I think Western culture has been like shifting and shifting. We've got the strength, we've got the talent, we've got what it takes. It's just a matter of, will we rise up? We need to like take the reins, because democracy hasn't been working the way it should be, and it's up to us, it's up to the people to be the leaders. We're the leaders now. It's like anyone who's awake to what's happening on this planet, we're the leaders, and it's time for us to lead.
So what's your preferred pronoun?
Possibly you, as in universe.
Well, listeners, I'm very lucky to be sitting in an alleyway with this universe, who is very fierce and very attractive. And this universe has several CDs out. So if you wanted to check out Jara Human, all you have to do is go on Facebook and look for Jara Human, or what website could they go to?
JARRAH.cc. Yeah.
Or just come to Lismore.
Yeah, and on the 29th, I'm singing a Sacred Song fundraiser. It's like for the Amazon fires, and all the money is going to go straight to Amazon Watch to support them and their, as far as I know, really high integrity, working with Indigenous people in the forest there. I'm going to be singing beautiful, mantras and sacred songs about nature and the planet. You can just come and lie down and soak in the tunes, and it's going to be at Lilyfield Dharma Centre, which is out the back in Nimbin. Just check it out on Facebook. I think it's under Sacred Songs, Amazon fundraiser.
Okay, well, we're going to hear one of Jara's songs now. Thank you so much, Jara, for coming on Fierce.
Yeah. Woo.
I love it when you give up. There's nothing inside. I love it when you give up. There's nothing to hide. I love seeing you pull downstream. In the current, you don't even struggle, you don't scream. I love it when you give up all your hopes and dreams and go with what seems to be right now. And you don't know, and you don't know, and you don't know. You're not afraid to laugh, afraid to cry, afraid to stand there and just be alive. I love it when you give up. There's nothing inside. I love it when you give up. There's nothing to hide. I love seeing you pull downstream. In the current, you don't even struggle, you don't scream. I love it when you give up all your hopes and dreams and go with what seems to be right now.
Guns.
Hi, this is Dana Lyons, the singer of the song Cows with Guns, and you are listening to Fierce.
I'm here with Aidan Ricketts, who's an academic with the School of Law and Justice at Southern Cross University in Lismore. And we're talking about a workshop that's happening called the Erosion of the Right to Protest. So Aidan, what's going on?
I suppose what we've seen in the last 3 to 5 years is a massive upsurge in the passing of anti-protest laws and regulations around Australia. So far, they were confined to Conservative-led state governments, but now we've seen the advent of the Labor government in Queensland bringing out anti-protest bill to try and deal with both Extinction Rebellion and anti-Adani protesters, and we've seen the federal Labor opposition vote with the government on anti-protest legislation recently in the federal parliament, which is extremely concerning. If, the Labor Party have always been in opposition to these sorts of laws, it's extremely concerning if the Labor Party, for example, begins to allow there to be a political consensus in favour of anti-protest laws. Australia's protest social movements have a very, very long and proud history of non-violent action. It's very hard to search for any examples of any kind of violence, particularly environmental protests in Australia, over the last 40 years. The rise of anti-protest laws cannot be attributed to any problem with violent protest. It can only be attributed to an uprise in protest in response, of course, to extinction crisis and climate change, mining and logging. Really, the only arguable impetus behind these laws is the actual vested interests and the lobby groups themselves who are starting to feel the pinch. Because in my studies of protest in Australia, the only thing that's changed is who is the target of the protests. And now that the all-powerful mining industry has become one of the primary targets of the protest, I think that begins to explain why we're seeing a response at an alarmingly bipartisan level from both major parties in our parliaments.
Labor are bringing these bills because they run on corporate donations by these companies.
Corporate donations to politics are a major problem in Australia. At least the Senate passed the Greens bill for an independent commission against corruption at the federal level, but that's being opposed by the government.
How does the government oppose things like that when it's actually to investigate them?
Well, they just use their numbers in the parliament to vote against it.
But how do they have that right? That's corruption, isn't it? Isn't that a vested interest in what's happening?
Well, look, I think this is the problem, is this concept of the word corruption. We tend to visualise corruption as being passing of secret amounts of money in brown paper bags by and to political operatives.
Or Aldi bags.
Or LD bags. That's how we visualise corruption, yet the kind of corruption that's happening under our noses 365 days of the year out in the open, in the form of openly acknowledged corporate donations to political parties in the tune of millions of dollars, creates a business as usual, which I think amounts to corruption, in which the passing of secret bags of money becomes unnecessary. So, you've got a situation where, for example, the mining and fossil fuel industries have been passing millions of dollars in donations to both of the major sides of politics for many, many decades. And we've also seen, a revolving door of employment between people in high political office, again, across the political spectrum of the major parties, and into and out of lobby groups for particularly, again, the mining and fossil fuel industry. If our definition of corruption is only something that's happening behind closed doors, we're kind of missing the point of the corruption that's right in our faces all of the time. And it really is time, I think that's right. The only way forward really is both an independent commission against corruption to rout out fully illegal corruption, as well as a ban on political donations from corporations to rout out ordinary, everyday corruption.
What's going to be happening in this workshop? You're going to be advising people on what they can now do, but that could change again in a month's time.
I'm going to be tracing the anti-protest laws as they've been emerging around the country. They began in Conservative-run states. Normally the Labor oppositions and so on were opposing them, and then this shift now where Labor's beginning to support them at both state and federal level in some instances. Certainly looking at the nature of the laws, the prohibitions that are being brought in, and also the narrative behind them concerning the right of businesses to be free of protest. And it's an interesting rights narrative, because at the same time as we abandon long-standing international human rights recognised by treaties that Australia is a party to, like the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, rights to protest, rights to assembly, we've got politicians inventing hitherto the right for businesses to be immune from protest. I mean, protest, even where it causes inconvenience, is part of the inconvenience of democracy. And this idea that mere inconvenience is a reason to clamp down on democratic expression is extremely concerning.
So what are you going to do about it, Aidan? Could you take us through a couple of what you can do, what you can't do anymore?
Sometimes these anti-protest laws are very substantive. Queensland proposal is to create an offence of possessing or using a lock-on device and then impose extremely heavy penalties on that. And I've criticised that in my article on The Conversation, because lock-on devices, in my long experience, actually maintain safety at blockades and other protests rather than be a problem for safety. They create a very orderly sort of blockage that the police respond to in an orderly way and the rest of the crowd can stand around. The recent federal law about using a carriage service to incite trespass is very much a sort of a rhetorical response to what's been dubbed the vegan protests. You get the sense with that federal legislation they're not really trying to achieve all that much except some political points, because it's odd in that it doesn't change the consequences of protesting on private property. It only impacts on the ability to use social media to encourage protests on private property.
There's actually more people protesting than ever, even though they keep on trying to bring up new rules, scaring people off. However, my concern is for the LGBTIQ and other minority groups that have been protesting for important reasons and now can no longer do that and don't have the strength of numbers to actually get away with some of the stuff like the Lismore global climate strike, which is happening on the streets because Extinction Rebellion said we're doing it on the street, we're not doing it in the quad. And so the police just had to accommodate that, not paying any council fees or anything like that. But these smaller minority groups don't have that strength of numbers to have that rank or that chutzpah to make that stuff happen. Do you have any thoughts for those minority groups?
That's absolutely right, that, these laws are being, largely pushed by vested interests like mining and logging industries, but yet their impacts are on absolutely everybody's rights to protest. Look, I think it's great. Extinction Rebellion definitely has the right approach to put a lot of work into building as big a mainstream movement that's safe to participate in for as many people as possible, because that large-scale mainstream civil disobedience is the one thing that the state really cannot cope with. Large-scale mainstream civil disobedience is effective even in dictatorships, we've seen, although obviously can be extremely dangerous. It is definitely problematic for minority groups if they are having, their own issue protests, because they will be smaller. One of the things we need to look at is building, and I think Extinction Rebellion is a good basis for this, but building, as big a broad cross-section of the community that covers so many of the issues as we can, so that, protests become a very large collective action. Reintegrate and intersectionalise a lot more of our issues, so that given the need that's arising, we might be able to, deal with those things in larger numbers. All is not lost with the anti-protest laws. They're piecemeal. They're not going to stop the use of lock-ons, for example. They're just going to impose much bigger sentences on them, because once a person's locked on, they're locked on. You can tell them they're not allowed to be locked on, but they already are. At this stage, being able to have a mass movement that's large does cause the police to need to accommodate it in some way or other. We're fortunate in the Northern Rivers. We have a good, strong community that does come together on various issues across the board. It's very mutually supportive. The police are used to that, and we do have extensive police liaison that often precedes things like Bentley, and the police have learnt to see the value of that. If you've got 1,500 school kids in the CBD for the day, what do you want? Do you want to give them permission to shut down a street? The police are very quick to see the sense of proposing a place for it to happen. If you're blockading a mine site, then there's a definite objective, a conflict of purpose between whoever's trying to mine or log and whoever's trying to stop them. But for something like a climate strike, it is also something where we can just be celebrating community solidarity and doing it in a way that's actually cooperative with police. I think that's a good thing as well.
And so this show goes all over Australia and New Zealand. So where can people go if they're not in Lismore to do this workshop or to see you? I know you've got a book called The Activist's Handbook.
I do have a book called The Activist's Handbook, but of course, this stuff's moving so quickly, a hard copy book can't keep up with it. I mean, I have my own website where I look at some of these things, which is aidanricketts.lt. I publish academic articles on these, but of course they have limits on how accessible they are to the general public. But I actually run a university subject on activism and public interest advocacy, which is run through my law school and Southern Cross University, but it's actually open for people to enrol in and study. People who are already students can study it and count it towards a degree, or people who aren't can just do it as an adult education unit for a reduced fee. So that it's actually happening at the Gold Coast in the first week of December this year. It's 5 days. It's the equivalent of a university subject but people can do it without assessment if they don't need to count it towards a degree. So there's sort of the two ways of doing it. So that's a good way to actually come and find me and get the up-to-date information in a one-on-one setting, and also learn a lot more about advocacy and community activism skills. Summer school of the School of Law and Justice at Southern Cross University.
You've been involved a long time in the civil disobedience movement in different places. So how has your life been enriched by being involved in this?
The long answer to that is I grew up in Bajocki-Peterson's Queensland, and I was a young urban youth into the terrible dark 80s of big city in Queensland. So I was sort of dipped in the very, very deep end of these things early in life. And certainly when I came to New South Wales, the police force here were doing things very differently than the police force I was used to in Bajocki-Peterson's Queensland. I also have family in the police force, so I have tended with my legal training and also my understanding of family in the police force, I was able to sort of get into police liaison, which I think is a very important role to allow the police, if they are willing to take that opportunity, to be the meat and the sandwich rather than the issue themselves. And that's something we really encourage in the way we do things in the Northern Rivers. In terms of being a lifelong activist, my message to that is really very simple. It's that once your basic needs are secured, there really is no more useful thing you can be doing in this world by attempting to look after the planet and make the world a better place for everybody in it. That's a life well lived, that's a life with purpose. And I kind of think in all of the myriad ways people do activism, and look, they can do it through art, they can do it through music, they can do it in so many ways, but really to have that focus, to just ask ourselves, well, once my basic needs are secured, how am I assisting to care for country, look after the planet, make the world a better place? Happiness comes from being part of something bigger than yourself. And I actually believe that our society, our global economy is a form of collective psychosis based on disconnection from nature and community, and that not only does being involved in activism potentially bring us towards hopefully a better world, but it is actually a source of sanity. The only way to stay sane in an economy that's lost its grip on science and physics is to take yourself back to nature, take yourself back to real science, take yourself back to real physics and real ecology, and see the way this world actually works. As disturbing as end times can be, it is a lot better to face those with your feet firmly planted on the planet on which you evolved and with a sense of how the universe you live in works, because the current economic system that we have contradicts physics, and as it's moving into negative interest rates, I fear it's about to contradict maths in its last gasp.
Well, listeners, Aidan Ricketts is kinky, fierce and very attractive, so Google him to find out more.
Thank you for listening to Fierce. This program celebrates the diversity of LGBTIQ identities and perspectives. Fierce is produced in Bundjalung Country at 2NCR Lismore, and can also be heard on podcast at fiercefm.podbean.com and in New Zealand on Fresh FM, as well as all over Australia through the Community Radio Network.